It's always a privilege to be joined by my friend Howard Megdal to talk a little WNBA action. Had the opportunity to connect with him here on BetSided at the beginning of the season. And now, Howard, we are at the final point. The WNBA Finals are on Sunday. We figured the Las Vegas Aces were probably going to get there perhaps at the beginning of the season. I
Mhm.
don't know if I could have told you that after what I saw over the last handful of games that maybe Connecticut would get there, but what an absolute collapse by Chicago. And I suppose you do have to give Connecticut some credit. Their defense, especially down the stretch of those final 9-10 minutes, where they limited Chicago to 5 points in the
Mhm.
fourth quarter, absolutely astounding.
Well, I think we have to give Connecticut credit on both sides of the ball, truly. The fact that in game 4, the Connecticut Sun were able to score 104 points against the Chicago Sky is just mind blowing to me. And so you combine that with, again, what they were able to do, how they were able to finish that game down the stretch in game 5 in front of a hostile crowd. And it's just absolutely a worthy finals team. Now, that said, we should point out this doesn't come out of nowhere. They led the lead in net rating this year, not the Sky, not the Aces. So this has been an
Yeah.
elite Connecticut Sun team all season.
As far as that goes, I did my best in some sort of a post game rant on Twitter on Thursday night, just trying to figure out what happened to the Sky. I
Hmm.
tried to guess the line, and I said, all right, I think it's going to end up being Las Vegas 5.5 for game
Mhm.
one at home on Sunday. Total probably comes in around 163.5, 164. I ended up being right on the spread. The
Mhm.
total, I was way off. We're seeing a lot of these books open up at 169.5. And I think it's going to what you've discussed, that even though the Sun had some issues with the exception of game 4 really scoring the basketball in their previous series, they're capable of really locking in offensively. And as you mentioned, the net rating over the course of the season, really good in comparison with these two teams. Over the course of the regular season, you had Connecticut third in points per game, Las
Mhm.
Vegas one in points per game. Net points, Las Vegas was second, Connecticut was first. In points per 100 possessions, Las Vegas first, Connecticut third. I mean, it sounds like from an analytics perspective, this number is actually where it should be, even though we've seen more of a commitment defensively, especially in the postseason from Connecticut of late.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there's two elements to that are significant. One, like you said, this is a Sun team that has tended to slow things down during this half decade of really elite play from Kurt Miller and company, but they have not been as eager to do so, to slow things down this year and then specifically in the playoffs. The fact that they were willing to go out there and play at essentially the Sky's pace and go win in game 4, I'm sure juiced that number quite a bit. But it means that instead of, they should, and they plan to, I'm sure, to try and, as Kurt Miller keeps talking about, make it messy against the Las Vegas Aces, but are willing to go out there and score, number one. And number two, they've been able to. I mean, just the emergence of Courtney Williams over these last couple of games, the fact that Courtney Williams is now somebody who can create her own shot like she always does, but is doing so and hitting them at an elevated rate, well north of 50% from the field over the last 2 games, gives them another option to combine with that three-headed monster up front of Jonquel Jones, Bree Jones, and Alyssa Thomas.
That's what I think makes this matchup really fun. I had joked before that if we can't have the Storm and the Aces play for the championship, then, based on what we'd seen all year, I was hoping it would be the Aces in the Sky and give Connecticut credit for getting to this point. And you're right, there's stars on this team, and you have plenty of stars on the Aces side. And especially if Courtney Williams continues this level of play, I
Mhm.
mean, you're talking about a clutch performer down the stretch, but now she's going to have to balance that against Chelsea Gray, who played on an absolute dynamite level. Both her and Asia Wilson were spectacular for Las Vegas, especially in games 3 and 4 in Seattle.
What is amazing to me is Asia Wilson has played like the MVP that she is this year. She and Brianna Stewart have been as efficient during the postseason as they were during the regular season. Chelsea Gray is a clear level above them both in terms of points per possession, if you go by Synergy's numbers, for instance. And it's just, Chelsea Gray has effectively been a 60-60-90 player, which is just, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. And yet it is in this case, plus, the fact that she's distributing assist percentage north of 40%, she is doing absolutely everything. And so, yeah, I mean, Courtney Williams needs to come in and score for the Sun, but the Sun, simply put, need to find a way to dramatically slow down Chelsea Gray. If Gray is doing what she is doing, along with what Asia Wilson has been all season, it's just going to be very difficult to keep up with the Las Vegas Aces.
So I read your preview over at 538, which you can check out as well. And the head coach of the Seattle Storm, Noelle Quinn, basically said, I don't think anyone on planet Earth can guard her. I think that makes it even more interesting for Connecticut because of how good and how well they can lock in defensively. If you're going to try to slow down Chelsea Gray, because you're probably not going to stop her, it's sort of like that old line, about Michael Jordan. You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him. What does Connecticut do defensively? How do they try to slow her down? And by doing so, does it open up more opportunities for Wilson inside? Does it open up more shots for Plum? Like, what gets sacrificed as a result of trying to slow down Chelsea Gray?
Reminds me of another line about Michael Jordan that said the only one who could hold Michael Jordan beneath 20 points per game was Dean Smith, right? His college coach. And the fact of the matter is that Becky Hammon is way too smart to try and hold back Chelsea Gray. So you're going to have her in full effect. I think you have to throw everything and the kitchen sink right at him. And I say that by means of, that's essentially what Noelle Quinn tried to do with Seattle. She ultimately settled on Gabby Williams. Gabby Williams is one of the best on-ball defenders in the WNBA and just couldn't even slow down Chelsea Gray. So you're throwing a lot of big bodies at her. You're throwing a lot of traps, a lot of double teams. There is not a, quote unquote, single defender who you're going to be able to use on her. I'll be very curious to see if we see some DeWanna Bonner on her. If you try to bother her with Bonner's length, but of course, Chelsea Gray is just sheer force. She's so strong. It makes it very difficult to be able to slow her down when she's getting downhill. So the biggest thing is to clog that lane, make it as difficult as possible for her to get there. If she's going to have to bounce off of John Paul Jones and Alyssa Thomas just to get to the rim, maybe you're able to slow her a little bit. It's a very difficult task, but frankly, if anyone's up to it on a team-wide level, it's the Connecticut Sun. So that's what makes this such a fascinating matchup with Gray.
Let's talk about the beginning of this game, because one of my favorite bets throughout the course of the WNBA playoffs has been first quarter, either totals or sides. And in the first two games for Las Vegas at home against Seattle, they were a terrible first quarter team. Looking at their numbers, their net rating in the first quarter via WNBA stats page was, I'm pulling it up right now because it's I just want to make sure that I get this right. Their net rating in the first quarter, minus 18.6. They did not come out executing well offensively at all. Defensively, they were also bad, had a defensive rating of 122.2. If you were Connecticut and you just went out and showed that after losing four straight games to Chicago in the regular season, and then being able to take two out of three games in their home building, my first impression is I'm probably going to lean on the Sun in the first quarter, knowing the gap between Las Vegas having played back, I believe, was on last Sunday or last Tuesday for Game 4 versus Connecticut. Yes, they have to travel again, but ultimately, this has been a team that's been far superior as of late in the first quarter. And I think they're going to surprise some people by getting off to a really solid start and maybe holding Las Vegas down offensively when they really haven't been able to get it going early in the game.
I don't understand why people, and I don't think you're wrong, but why people continue to be surprised by the Connecticut Sun. If you are thinking about a team that has been consistently effective for the last half decade, no one's been better over the past 5 years than the Connecticut Sun. This is the team, like we said, that led the league in net rating overall. And yet, after they lost Game 3, the conventional wisdom had shifted around. It's just, all right, what time does Game 1 of Chicago, Las Vegas start? And so I say all that by virtue of the Sun now riding this high, coming out and winning in Chicago, knowing and doing that in a matter of 48 hours. The smart money, you would say, was, oh God, well, Vegas is rested. The Sun have to now fly and go take care of this on a road trip on Sunday. But I'm with you. I think it is very possible that the Sun come out and punch first. Of course, we cannot dispute the idea that the Las Vegas Aces have been ready for everything,
Yeah.
everything, and have jumped on any potential weakness of any team. I mean, I just want to take you back to the latter stages of Game 3 when Seattle had a 2-point lead with 7 seconds to go, and Tina Charles at the line. Tina makes those free throws, and we might be talking about a completely different WNBA Finals altogether. But as soon as she missed those, that gave Vegas just enough of an opening, and they took advantage once, twice, and then crushed them in OT. So it's going to be utterly fascinating.
I'll tell you, I was probably the first one to admit that I was wrong about the Sun. And given the sample size, like you said, over the last half decade, they've been terrific. I I was wrong here. I kind of thought that they were a bit of bum slayers over the course of the regular season. They were dominant against bad teams, but their
Right.
record against Chicago, 0-4. I think 1-3 against the spread in those games. Las Vegas, they did not do particularly well. And even their matchup against Dallas, they were 1-2 against the Wings this year, 1-2 against the spread. My perspective was from a betting side, like, yeah, Connecticut will win the games that they're supposed to, and there's certainly talent. But during the course of the regular season, I wanted to see them do more. And I thought the net rating stat was maybe a bit misleading because of all their quality wins against bad to mediocre teams. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it's so true. And I also think it's worth pointing out that this is a fundamentally different Connecticut team than we saw even a few weeks ago. I mean, let's not forget, this is a team that had to restructure its offense after Jasmine Thomas went down for the year. And Jasmine Thomas is effectively, and this is no slap at Natisha Heidemann, who's a very effective player, but Thomas was their point guard. Thomas was their point guard, period, on this roster. And effectively, they've had to reconfigure how they're running their offense, who they're running their offense through, and structure that in a way that allows them to produce against top teams. I absolutely believe Kurt Miller figured something out during the course of that series against Chicago. So yes, all of that, points well taken. Even coming into that Dallas series, I thought the Wings had a chance to knock them off because of that. But this Sun team has evolved before our eyes over the course of these playoffs.
All right. So through their evolution and changing and adapting, I think you also saw it with Las Vegas as well. I think they've become a much more committed defensive team, especially down the stretch in the second half of games against Seattle. Really impressed me, particularly on the road. So you have two teams trying to figure out what their identity is going to look like, establishing that identity, and maybe surprising some people along the way. I say all this to get to the point where we get to go ahead, make a prediction on the series. And also, I want to get your perspective on game one. Mention the line, Las Vegas -5.5 over at FanDuel. If you want to bet Connecticut on the money line, you can basically get them at 2-1 odds. They're plus 198 with a total of 169.5. Let's start with game one, and then let's make a pick on the series. I'm going to take Connecticut in the first quarter. I'm probably going to lean on them in game one as well at plus 5.5. What say you for game one? What would you say is your probable best bet here?
I think it's really hard to bet against a rested Aces team at home with the opportunity to go win that title. You know, this is a team, you know, we had a chance to talk to Asia Wilson and Chelsea Gray after they clinched, and there was a real sense that they were in the finals back in 2020, just happy to be there. And now, and you see this phenomenon across sports, right? You know, that first blush, you're just happy to be there. They're not just going to be happy to be there. It is about building a legacy there. And I just think it's real tough to bet against that team going out and doing what it needs to do. 5.5 is a relatively small number for that team at home as well. And, you know, coming up late, and this is also a key part of it, if it's anything less than coming down to the last couple of possessions, it could be the Aces shooting free throws, and they're just so effective at the line. They're able to pad those numbers late.
Yeah, I think that part makes sense. And it's part of the reason why I think I like the Sun on the earlier side, to be able to come catch them off guard a little bit before you know it. The Aces are likely going on a run. And that's when all of a sudden that number can get blown out, their ability to get to the free throw line, stretch out possessions, their ability to get open shots. You're right. They could run away with it, I think, in the second half after getting punched in the mouth initially. But so it sounds like we're slightly on different sides here, even though we kind of see the game going in similar fashions. What about for the series? I know you mentioned it's an opportunity and a legacy for both these teams, both of these coaches. The Aces are minus 290 to win the series. Connecticut, solid value there, plus 220. I know you like the Aces in game one. Do you like them to win the series as well?
It's the type of thing where I think this is much closer to a coin flip than Vegas has it. Over 538, we have our projections. I think it's something like 56% likely for the Aces, 44% likely for Connecticut. And so again, you come back and you say that ain't far from a coin flip. So why am I not putting money on the Sun in that scenario? It just seems like I truly do not know who's going to win this series. And so when you go into that from a betting perspective, if it feels like a true coin flip, you go where the value is.
Howard, before we let you go, the fantastic coverage that you and your team, both at the Nine, the Next Hoops, have been putting together has been outstanding. For anybody that's looking beyond my betting predictions, our betting picks from Donovan Smoot and myself, where can they go for outstanding journalism covering the league and really detailed and expert analysis before they go ahead and make their bets? Where can they go?
I appreciate it. Yeah, over at thenexthoops.com, we have over 100 reported pieces every single month about women's basketball, every kind of information that you're going to need, large and small. There are all kinds of nuggets you're going to be able to use in your day-to-day. To subscribe, it's $9 a month, $72 a year. You're going to make your money back many times over doing that. And then, of course, make sure you're listening to us every day at Locked On Women's Basketball. We've got a daily podcast. That one's free, and you can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. So highly recommend both of those for anyone who's serious about this space.
And especially if you're looking to get some insight analysis while you're betting the game live. I know you guys have been doing some of those great opportunities to
live with you too. Let me make sure, and you joined us for that. It was such a great time. Every single
had a bad beat in the Sky and Mystics game. I don't know if you remember that. I think Washington came all the way back on it.
I do, but I enjoyed the company so much it didn't even matter. It was over at Playback. We've got an opportunity to watch live. It's pinned at the Next Hoops in our Twitter account, but make sure you join us for live analysis in game from all of our writers. We're going to be there for every single game of the WNBA Finals, and then we're going to be taking that straight into the World Cup and college basketball as well. So you'll be able to get that information in this space.
Howard, you're the goods. Always appreciate your time and your insight. Thank you, my friend.
Always great to see you, Bet. Be well.